Hello, everyone, and welcome to Press Coverage. I'm your host, Kyle Senra, and joining me for this episode is Travis May. How you doing, Travis?
Good to be here. Just talking some fantasy football and whatever else we get to.
Yeah, just love having tons of guests on Press Coverage, and as always, appreciate any, of course, you coming on, but also any interactions we get from the chat. So if anyone wants to come on and chat up live, ask any questions, give their own opinions, feel free. We're on the Going for Two YouTube page, Twitch page, Facebook page as well, so you can comment from all those and like and subscribe at all those places. If you're watching after the fact and not live, especially on YouTube, we appreciate if you comment under the video as well. So just help us reach out, and it's the best way to help support us. So we appreciate that, and yeah, we can get started at the very start. The first question is, what are your first sports memories? What do you remember as your introduction to sports in general?
Oh man, it's funny. I was born in 1989, and so and I'm from Indiana, so I don't remember anything really prior to like Michael Jordan dominating. Like I remember like some of my first memories of like NBA games were just mainly all Michael Jordan playoff games, just dominating like here in week out, year in, year out. It was just constant. And I grew up actually rooting for the Pacers too. I was from Indiana. There's not, even now, there's not very many sports teams in Indiana that are pro teams. So I grew up on, Reggie Miller. And I know most people probably hated Reggie Miller. I didn't. So I rooted for him and just had, respect for MJ for being the GOAT, But those were definitely the earliest ones. Went to a bunch of Cardinals games because my mom was from St. Louis, and he really didn't actually get into pro football a ton until I was probably about 9 or 10, and actually went to my first Titans game, like when they were still the Tennessee Oilers, here in Nashville for a year, because my uncle actually had some tickets just through some corporate stuff, and back then that was prime, like early Titans with, Frank Wycheck and Kevin Dyson and Eddie George and Steve McNair. And like, it was a really fun offense, and their defense was just crazy. So it was a really great time to just be introduced to the Titans. And so I hadn't really latched onto the Colts at that point. So I was like, you know what? All my friends are Colts fans. I'm going to be the odd man out and root for the Titans.
The division rivals of all of them, right?
Yeah,
It just had to be a division foe.
Oh yeah, and that worked out until about like 2005, and then as soon as Steve McNair left, Peyton Manning made that pretty terrible for about a decade or so. So
Yeah, I think there was a recent like play-in game, right, where they both were like a Week 17 Colts Titans game, and I want to say the Titans won that, right? Or do I make you feel that?
they had been getting dominated for over a decade thanks to Peyton Manning and then Andrew Luck, and they'd struggled to find quarterbacks, but really Mariota actually did have more success than we give him credit for, and Tannehill has too. So they've kind of taken over the AFC South again, which is a lot of fun. But yeah, definitely had some miserable years in between there, though.
Well, some Titan triumphs, division titles and whatnot, and got some guests already rolling in. Troy Olson's here saying, "Yo, dudes." You saying Kyle Senra is the man, but I actually say Travis May is the man. But
what's up, Troy? How's it going, man?
I'll leave that up. But yeah, so I guess that's real sports, but the fake fantasy sports. So when did that come into play? When you make that jump?
Fantasy sports, really, that just kind of accidentally happened because I wasn't even super into the NFL like super early on. I was really into baseball. My main sport that I played growing up was baseball. I tried to play way too many sports early on in high school. Ended up tearing my ACL. I was trying to like initially do like cross country, basketball, and baseball, and then the track coach wanted me to come out just for meet sometimes for the long distance stuff. So I was trying to do like 4 sports when I first kicked off high school. Ended up tearing my ACL. Not a lot of fun, but I was super into baseball at the time, not football. It wasn't until probably I liked football. I played with friends, but whatever. But it wasn't until like probably the 05, 06, whatever it was, the matchup between Reggie Bush and USC and Vince Young and Texas. Like that game, seriously, that was like the watershed moment for me, just getting hooked on football. and getting hooked on college football specifically. And around that time, I had, done co-owning like with a couple buddies that just wanted to have something in common for fantasy football, and I would just kind of loosely pay attention to it. But really around 2010, had a couple college buddies that got me into some leagues, and they were like, "Hey, there's this thing called Dynasty," and never looked back after that. So just dove head first, went Dynasty leagues, Devy leagues. I got up to a dozen leagues in like 2 years, and I was like, yeah. So around 2010, I turned into a very casual football and fantasy football kind of guy to like, oh, okay, this is my thing now.
Well, I guess that's the birth of your dynasty life, which kind of leads into the next question, talking
Yeah.
about not just playing fantasy, but then sharing your knowledge with fantasy football content creation. So, what was that like, making that jump and that transition?
I think um, that basically happened around, I don't know. I just lived on message boards and stuff, and I was in leagues with a few people that were content creators. I knew a bunch of like the Dynasty Nerds guys back in the day. Um, but I thought, hey, you know what? I've got some ideas. I just kind of threw it out to this guy, Kevin Steele, over at the Fantasy Authority back in 2015 when they were brand new, and I think they only had like 2 or 3 writers at the time, and so I hopped on with them. They gave me an opportunity, and then they were like, hey, by the way, we don't really do Dynasty stuff. I know you really like that. Do you want to have our Dynasty podcast? Do you want to be our host? And I was like, I'd never hosted a podcast, but sure, why not? And so I did the Dynasty Live show with Justin McCaslin. He and I don't think had really ever talked before our first recording. It's like, so it was like, I think me and him, and then Andrew Frechette hopped on. And so it became me and Justin McCaslin and Andrew Frechette doing the Dynasty Live podcast. And I was doing a bunch of writing for them. And that opportunity with the Fantasy Authority just kind of grew up and turned into contributing several different places over the years. And so, I mean, that got me the opportunity to write at Dynasty League Football. Ended up doing some stuff with Dynasty Trade Calculator. Let's see, I did Dynasty Command Center and did the podcast with Curtis over there. Ended up doing some Titans and Falcons beat work for Last Word on Sports and the Music City Miracles, which is like an SB Nation thing here in Nashville. And then, of course, did some like guest column work for Fantasy Pros for Devy content when they were first trying out to see if anyone would actually read Devy content. I guess I think back in 2017, 2018, I did that for them. And but I guess it was 2019, I hopped on with RotoViz. And that's where my kind of process really changed in terms of how I approached the game, even when I started writing more for them and having more data and tools to work with. And then last year, got an opportunity to write for the Solid Verbal college football guys. If you follow college football podcasts at all, Solid Verbal, they've been around for like 15 years or something like that. And so it was cool to write for them when they kind of kicked off their website last year. So, I mean, I love NFL a bunch, but man, my baby is college football at this point.
So, yeah, I guess. So, okay, so you mentioned a few, like tons of different sites that you wrote for. And I'm sure
Yes.
that you gained so many influences along the way, but who are some of your biggest influences with not just, I guess, content creation, but fantasy football in general and your process evolving?
Yeah, I think like really early on, I think my biggest influences were Ryan McDowell at Dynasty League Football and Scott Fish way back when he had like the FF Oasis and they were doing some Devy content and message board stuff. That was probably 2013, 2012. I don't know what years that was, but like it was really hard to find anything for Devy fantasy football where you can roster college players on your NFL team before they're in the NFL. And I thought that was really cool. But it was very nerdy and none of my friends knew what it was in person. So like I couldn't, just play with my guys that I knew here because nobody was as big of a nerd as me. So I was like, I had to dig through the depths of the internet and Scott Fish was one of the people doing that. And really, so, I mean, he was really helpful in terms of, I don't know. I learned a lot about the tools and building out ADP stuff, even when I was doing some early Dynasty League football work before I guess he bounced out and did some fan ball stuff. And now he's, of course, one of the biggest celebrities in the entire industry. just thanks to the Scott Fish Bowl and all the charitable work that he does. But Ryan McDowell was really the guy that got me my first big break with Dynasty League football. He gave me this featured piece. I was writing my first top 100 rookies series. I don't know, 2015 or 2016 or something. And I just basically tweeted out something like, finished my top 100 rookies. And this was like in October for the next year. I just got to figure out where I need to write it. And he reached out directly and was like, "Hey, let's see how this works, and we'll get this on Dynasty League football." And so I was like, "Oh, that's cool. That's awesome." So really appreciate that opportunity. So really just those two guys early on, and that's kind of impacted where I've gone from there.
And I mean, those two, you mentioned the Scott's influence on charity, but I feel like Ryan McDowell's had a lot of influence on Dynasty in general.
Yeah,
Just like
absolutely.
growing that in popularity in the format and pushing that forward. And then I guess helping you have the opportunity to do the same with Devi is kind of just passing that torch along.
Yeah, and because even back in 2016, when I first started writing for Dynasty League football, Debbie was still not very popular, and so there wasn't much demand. But they just wanted to get it out there and really promote it, and so that was a lot of fun. And through those relationships, there we kind of built out this newer format that's taking on now, which is called Campus to Canton or College to Canton formats. Now that's kind of there's entire websites dedicated to that format. We didn't even have a name for it when we started playing it, but just the relationships formed through this nerdy hobby of ours have created a lot of other fun leagues and a lot of other fun things to do, even nerdy than we thought were possible 10 years ago or so.
Well, and it's funny you talk about just less than 10 years ago how Fantasy Pros wasn't sure if the people would read the Devi stuff, and then now
No.
when this press coverage show got created, what I guess last year, this first episode was January 2021. We had a bunch of new shows on the going for 2 Live Network here. It wasn't just suddenly the Armchair Show on Wednesday with Jeff, which still goes, by the way, and you can keep catching that. But quite a few shows came into existence, and one of those was the Devi Royale, which is now kind of those 3 guys have branched out on their own, and they've got their own patron website. They do their own podcast separate from us, but we did on the Dynasty Gambit, another show on the Going for 2 Live Network that I do co-host. We did have Jeff Bell come on and do an entire episode about Devi, and just explaining the structure, the different types of drafting. Are you doing separate draft for rookies in Devi, or are they the same picks? Are there limitations, and just kind of all the different strategies that go along with that? So I'd highly recommend if everyone wants to check out high intense Devi stuff is to go back in the archives and check out that Dynasty Gambit episode with Jeff Bell, because those guys, the Devi Royale, do a phenomenal job, and Jeff in that episode in particular did a great job explaining a lot.
Nice, man. Yeah, it's just cool to see, I don't know, just everything kind of play out and processes change. And I don't know, we all kind of grow with the hobby, with anything that we do in life. But it's fun to see like just different sites and podcasts and stuff kind of change how we interact with this hobby in general. It's a lot of fun.
And who knows, maybe someone is looking to start their own. So I guess we transition that to the next question. And what is one piece of advice that you would give to someone who is looking to start out, whether it's writing or podcasting?
Oh man, I'd say your first time around, just don't don't have to think you have to have it perfect early on. Because like when I look back at my early stuff, it's like it's kind of bad, but somebody gave me an opportunity, and it just takes reps more than anything. Like podcasting takes reps. Like my first shows of Dynasty Life were really bad. It took a lot of editing to make it sound like I had any clue at all what I was doing, and spending time in post, like when you're a podcaster, making sure that your final product actually sounds good, like taking time to actually do some EQ and simple adjustments. It goes a long way. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just put your best foot forward, and you'll stumble over your second or third one, but you'll figure it out as you go. So just reps. That's what I would say.
Well, I'll call back to the Full Press Fantasy Pod, which we're year 4 of that now, and you were one of our first guests we had on back in 2019, Travis.
Yeah,
And I'm sure, like my audio quality, I remember using like a headset mic, and it was something you use more for gaming, and mic quality not nearly as good as some of this other stuff that I have now. So I'm sure like that audio quality, I go back and listen, and it's not great for a lot of a lot of us, and we improved with just investing better equipment. Even I'm sure, like last year on press coverage, I had a different laptop, so my webcam mic not nearly as good a quality as what I've had this year. So
yeah,
gotta always just do it the best you can, but always be looking to improve as well.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, just yeah, and you kind of figure it out as you go. You realize, okay, this software was great when I began, but it probably has its limitations now, and so you can always just take one step in the right direction. And who knows what kind of opportunities you'll have next? Is like I said, I don't know. I've probably contributed for almost a dozen different places now, and took me a while to kind of find my voice and find my fit. But I love where I am now, so it's awesome.
So that's great, and we'll step away from the everything football for a second. And outside of everything you do, fantasy, devy, and football wise, what are your favorite hobbies?
Just stuff that I do all the time because I think I mean, I'd love to do. Well, summarize anything with a board. I like to do because like if I lived somewhere colder, I would snowboard all the time. If I lived on a beach, I would surf or skimboard all the time. But I don't. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, so I have to do the next best thing, and that is longboarding. There are some hills around my house, and so I love to just carve the hills, and it resets the mind. Just kind of zone out and yeah, just it's a good workout too. So that's one thing. But I love playing ultimate frisbee. I used to do that, get my butt beat by Nashville's pro team twice a week a few years ago, and so that was a lot of fun. So people that know me from 4 or 5 years ago still make jokes about how good or bad I am at ultimate frisbee. And I'm a flag football stats nerd, so like I do flag football leagues that we take ourselves way too seriously, and I build out stats. Like I keep the receiving dominator rating for everybody in our league. Like I've got like pressure percentage for our pass rushers, everything. Like we video every game, and so every stat that you can imagine for flag football, we pretty much have it. So it's a lot of fun.
Do you need professional commentators and voiceovers on the game tape as well? And
We actually do. We live
oh,
stream on Facebook, and so like with all of our friends and family, so that they can watch even if they can't make it to the game. And so it's really nerdy. Like some people go really hard and like make up fake sponsors and stuff. It's fun.
I was gonna say, are people going to make fantasy leagues of this? So like people drafting you? Okay, I want to draft Travis
We
May in
absolutely
the second
could.
round.
We absolutely could. It's not. We don't have enough teams to really make it super deep, but we definitely could score that out. We could make it PPR if we wanted to.
Shallow rosters, like start 4, start 5 kind of thing. And
Yeah, exactly. But we'd score IDP too, like your tackles and
yeah,
passes
yeah.
defended and all that. Yeah.
All right, yeah, awesome. Cool. Fantasy, it's right. It's whether I mean, it seems like like you said, no matter what has a board, right? Whether it's a
Yeah.
snowboard, surfboard, longboard, draft
Yeah.
board, doesn't matter.
Draft board. Yes, draft boards count as boards. So, yep.
So I mean, you've already shared a lot, but is there anything that the fantasy community doesn't know about you?
I think a lot of people don't know like what I do during the day. Like so I used to work in music publishing, and I did that for 6 or 7 years. Um, and I was in booking for a little while before that. I was in publicity before that. Had opportunity to do a bunch of grunt work back in the day for like Blake Shelton. Like so did some country music stuff and some Christian music stuff. But now I'm a pastor now, and so that's changed. I did that in my early 20s, and now I'm doing that again now. So I am a pastor on top of fantasy football nerd.
And I mean, are you going on tour like those bands you like used to follow, or is it or stationary?
Stationary, when I was doing the booking thing, I was out a little bit more, but now the publishing world is very nerdy and boring space, and it's way more stationary. So yeah.
And I guess so. I'm just curious when you say grunt work with Blake Shelton, like you mean like roadie going on tour and all the
Yeah, I was
setup,
doing
or
a bunch of press kits and damage control back in his Miranda Lambert days when there was a bunch of drama to put out. So yeah, I won't really go into the details, but yeah, some fun stuff that we had to distract people with other things. Oh, but he's on The Voice. I don't know. It was fun. I learned a lot from some really smart people who were like my first boss in the business was actually, she's now kind of blown up. Like she's actually Taylor Swift's publicist. Like she's like one of the best in the business. And so just learned a whole lot from her. Um, she was, I don't know, she's very just headstrong and intelligent, but man, she scared the crap out of me. Like my first work for her. And yeah, but it was a fun time.
So I mean, sometimes that's maybe a good sign of a boss, right? When they strike that little bit of fear, you're not
Yeah,
not
just
the
a little bit.
not the
Like,
traumatizing fear, but just
yeah,
enough to
yeah, like
okay.
she might just fire me today. Like I'm not really, I don't know. She just feels like it. But
Always got to be on your best, right? Maybe that's
hmm
the instill
yeah,
that fear so that everyone's always at their best.
yeah, I guess so.
Uh, but yeah, so we don't have to go back to that drama. We can do much more relaxed and fun topics here. And yeah, you guess you've done a lot of podcasts and a lot of different spaces. But if you could interview one person all time, who would you like to talk with?
Like on my current podcast, or just like,
It could be a fictional podcast that doesn't necessarily have to do with fantasy or football either. Like it could be just like
oh man,
like a theoretical idea of an interview podcast. But if you want to stick to fantasy, that's also
I
applicable.
think this for people who are uh maybe they don't have a Christian background like me, they wouldn't find it as intriguing. But being the pastor that I am, like there are so many like fun podcasts that would have been had. Like if I were to interview kind of anybody from the Bible, like that'd be really funny to me to actually have a podcast interviewing some of the like most insane stories from back in the day. I think I'd probably want to interview. I mean, like Jesus is a cop out. Like I can't say that, but like, but like, I mean, that's an obvious one. But I
I
think
mean, you
like
can say it to be
I
fair. So
can say it, but that's too easy. So
yeah.
that would probably be the answer. But like, I think like David and Goliath, that'd be kind of fun. Like, cause he had such a strange upbringing and so many different chapters to his life. I think that would be a lot of fun. Like he went from anointed king when he was 13 to killing giants to running for his life to actually being king to covering up an affair and murdering a guy. Like how does that happen? Like so there's like so much to like there's so many questions. So many questions. Like what the heck happened, David? What's going on?
That would be a long interview. You
It
get a
would
lot of
be, because
content.
it would be, but I think it would be fun. So that would be my random podcast that I think we get a lot of traffic.
Well, I guess speaking of the Bible, the next question is talk about your biggest revelation you've ever had, or that something you
Huh.
have had that you maybe you wish you had earlier in your life.
Man, I think just outside of just spiritual stuff in general, I think it would just be like it's super important to just eliminate this idea that you have to hurry. I think that I have to hurry and hustle and go like constantly. Um, I think now, maybe it's because I'm a dad, and I've had to slow down some with my son and just like, well, you know what? This week, my wife is sick and I've got to quarantine with my son, and I can do nothing. All I can do this week is just take in how awesome my 7 month old kid is, and just enjoy the moment rather than constantly feeling like, well, I've got to hit this deadline for writing or podcasting, or I've got this coming up with this huge event and all this planning I've got to do, and I've got to do it now, and like letting it stress me out and affect my mood and how, probably how I'm interacting with the people around me too, the most important people around me. And if I could just eliminate that pressure that is mostly put on myself, that I think I'm not alone in doing so, I think we'd be a lot better off. And I think if I had understood how important it was to eliminate hurry from my life and just this need to constantly be going and going, I would probably have just allowed myself to engage in some more key moments and relationships. I think in my life, just dating back to my early 20s, I think I would have just probably gained a lot more wisdom faster if I would have just sat back and not pressured myself so much.
Patience is a virtue, right?
Yeah, but just eliminating hurry from
Mhm.
just my constant mindset. That's tough.
And you think, I guess, has Devi helped with that at all? Knowing that, okay, you're taking these players and you got to wait for them so long, you can't hurry them up to the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's what did it. Not being a father, not figuring out how to be married, 8 years into this thing. It was Devi for sure. But no, yeah, I think Devi Fantasy Football, where we can roster, players years in advance before in the NFL. I have one league that is the nerdiest thing in existence. We're probably all on some kind of FBI watch list as well. But like it's like my son, who is 7 months old, he was drafted this year because and not by me. It was by somebody else in the league just to kind of screw with me.
They want that leverage over you.
Yeah. So
Well,
the
you want your
rules
son on your
are,
team, don't you? If he ever gets that
yeah,
far.
exactly. So the rules are you can draft any living, breathing human being at any point. So um, yeah, so it makes it funny. Like we've got like I don't know how many hundreds of players that they haven't even played a college snap yet. Like because we're just like all recruiting nerds, and we follow these players throughout their camp progression and all this stuff because we love college football. We want them on our favorite college football team. And so it's called Pinnacle of Devi. That's the weirdest Devi league I've ever seen. And there's always jokes about like, hey, I saw this video of this 10-year-old that runs really fast. You got to give him on the draft board, but not really. So it's just, yeah. But Dwight Peebles was actually the one that he drafted my son Caleb as his final round pick this year. He even remembered like I think it came up in conversation like where I was zoned for high school. So he put like my son's name, the high school where he's going to go, 14 years from now, and like put in like athlete as his positional designation.
Yeah, a little
So
too early in his career to know exactly what he's going to specialize
yeah,
in.
if I had to guess, I'd say probably his best shot's going to be tight end, given my size and height and my wife. And I don't think we got enough speed probably between the both of us to play wide receiver, defensive back. And I'm not big enough to project any kind of offensive or defensive line. So I think tight end is probably a sweet spot, but we'll see. Well, I'll keep you posted on that.
You don't really want to be a running back as much as like you might fit the skill set wise, but I think everyone knows parents don't want your kids to be running backs.
No, you don't want 10,000 hits to the head. No.
So we're all going zero RB, but that I guess we've already got into the fantasy talk, but we'll
Yes.
continue with some more fantasy specific questions and talk about Travis your thoughts on zero RB.
Yeah, so a zero running back, I think, is one of the most misunderstood or really disagreed upon ideas in the fantasy space. Like when it first came into play, when it was really first branded, I guess, was really by the founder of RotoViz, Sean Siegel, called it zero running back. I think it was 2013 when he first wrote that piece, and he explained it so well. And you can still find it. I think he hasn't tweeted in years, but you can still find it on it's his pinned tweet from forever ago. And it really people just they hear zero running back and they think, oh, I mean, I can't. What do you mean I can't take like a running back to like round 7 or 8 or whatever, something silly? But that's not really the point. It was really just it was during a time like coming out of an era where we had all these feature backs that played until they were like 30 years old. And like right after a bunch of those guys were kind of on the downward trajectory of their career, we saw, the shelf life of running backs begin to shorten at that time. We saw, the number of games that they were missing kind of start to uptick. We saw the lack of a replacement generation of running backs coming in. And I'm not going to explain it as well as he would, but it's really taking advantage of this idea that you're playing the anti-fragility game. Whereas, like, if you are investing in a bunch of early round running backs, there's just kind of a base level expectation that their projected number of games missed is going to be higher than most every other position. And if you can secure other safer, higher upside players at other positions, while also securing key, I guess what we don't even really call them this anymore, but handcuff running backs later in rounds, when players who took those running backs instead of you see their elite stars injured, your team improves when their team worsens. And so it's this anti-fragility versus fragility, investing in a position that is innately riskier, especially back in that time, the data that we had, than other positions. And so he would, for the first 3 rounds, just go wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. Back then, nobody even really played super flex. So you just go 3, 4 wide receivers in a row. And then, when other people are trying to fill in their roster just to get the 9 starting spots filled, you're taking the most important handcuffs from around 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and filling in other positions as well. There's different approaches to zero RB though. But I think a lot of people just don't understand, it's just not investing in the position heavily in the first 2, maybe 3 rounds. But after that, there's not a magical formula that says, okay, round 4, you're good to go. Okay, round 8, you're good to go. There's just so many different ways to approach it too. You can go wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, and then go 0 running back, but take 5 in a row. It's not a set way to go about it. I think with any strategy, if you kind of hold to it year over year, and don't adjust for your league mates, don't adjust for changes in average draft position data, don't adjust for how a strategy is perceived. If all of your league mates are also 0 running back type guys, then that's absolutely not going to be the strategy to employ. So it was just a way to differentiate yourself at a time where everyone wanted to be the guy that was drafting Adrian Peterson, coming off of at the time, that was coming off of his 2,000-yard season. And so everyone was investing in those guys early. And if you felt like you didn't have a running back or 2 running backs or 3 running backs that were good early on, you felt like you couldn't win your league. And I think a lot of people still misunderstand. And when they see a 0 running back roster, it's so funny. I love your team, love the wide receivers, but I hate your running backs. You're missing the point. And so it can work. It just depends on your league mates. It depends on the format. And there's not one way to do it.
Well, I think you made a really good explanation. So I'm sure Sean would be very proud of that.
I hope so. And I'm sure he's listening right now for sure.
I think the idea is that you're gaining an advantage from the injury attrition.
Yes.
Like you mentioned, the other teams are decreasing, you're actually increasing your value. And, and it's not to say wide receivers or tight ends can't get hurt either, but I can think back to 2013. I feel like that was a really bad year for me fantasy wise. And I think is because, invest really early in Stephen Ridley or the David Wilson from the Giants. And make that your second or I'm pretty sure I took Doug Martin 102.
Man, coming off of that 2012 year where he was just a monster. Yeah. Oh yeah. And then of course he followed up with Dud. I think he missed most of the year. Yeah. Yeah. I remember that year. Stephen Ridley. Oh man, that's a name. Oh goodness. Patriots running backs, right?
Yeah, no, I think that was I think that specific year was the big fumble year for him, where he just kept fumbling all the time, and the only reason he kept getting the opportunities because everyone else kept getting hurt. So but eventually, when everyone got healthy, then it was you're done.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I know the answer to this, or at least I have a pretty good idea. But what is your preferred league format for Dynasty, or sorry, for fantasy football?
It is my preferred format is at this point college to Canton or campus to Canton formats, where it essentially functions like 2 side-by-side leagues. For those unfamiliar listeners, you have a college fantasy team and an NFL fantasy team, and when the college players move on from their college roster and they go to the NFL, they're automatically on your NFL side team, which is a lot of fun. That's fantastic. I mean, it offers so many different types of approaches. If you want to punt one side and completely go all in on the NFL or go all in on the college side, it's up to you, man. If you don't like how things are going on one side, you can really, really change how your team's constructed immediately. So there's just so many different types of picks in play, incoming freshman level, I guess college supplemental draft picks are very worth a ton, and rookie NFL picks are not worth very much because most everyone is already on a roster. So it's really fun, really weird. I really also like to include uh, high school players as eligible draft picks too, to even devify even further to secure players before they even come into college for you, which is especially nerdy. And on the college side, I've recently really enjoyed going super duper flex, where you can actually have not two quarterbacks, but actually have three quarterbacks if you want to, because there are 100 at this point. There are over 130 FBS teams, so that the quarterback depth, there's a lot more options to play around with. But that makes it really crazy.
I mean, I'm in a super duper flex for the NFL, so yeah, I can see
Oh,
the
that would
appeal.
be rough. Like, if you did have like three solid quarterbacks, great. But if you don't, good luck.
Yeah. But anyway, just to speak about the Campus to Canton format, going back to the going for two archives again, Jeff and Ryan on the Armchair Show actually had Felix Sharp from Campus to Canton on way back in, I think, March, right around the Combine. So, yeah, if you again, just like the episode with Jeff Bell on the Dynasty Gambit, if you want to find out more about Campus to Canton, specifically Felix does a great job explaining on that episode. So again,
Yeah, it's just
encourage
so
people to go back
crazy.
to the archives.
It's crazy to see that like it has its own site, and like we were just screwing around, just making up a format. I don't know when that was, like 2017 or whatever. I remember like I was like arguing with like, okay, what should the hashtag be? Like we were talking, just trying to figure out like
It was
what.
close, wasn't it? Wasn't it? It was something college to Canton or something, right?
Yeah, and then we're like, let's just do hashtag C2C. So we tried to like do that. We like just tried to get everyone starting to play it, and now it's a big thing. So really, and props to those guys on really just capitalizing on finding that niche and making just going all in with Campus to Canton.
Yeah, I figured you'd either say Devi or Campus to Canton, but knowing how much you do love college, it makes sense that you get the college players to score fantasy points for you right now.
Yeah, absolutely, makes it fun.
I guess have do you? I'm sure you want to win both, but like, do you find like would you prefer to just win the college side or just win the NFL side? Like, is college that much of a big interest to you that you feel like not as many people want to win that one, maybe, so you go in and try to win that one more?
I think it's easier for me to win the college side just because the depth and breadth of college is just a challenge. And so, unless you're playing with a bunch of people who have been following college for at least 3+ years, it's going to be hard, for a new person to win. And so, I like going all in and really just winning the college side. But I think it's more sustainable to just fade the college assets and try to build off of more proven NFL stuff. Um, because they're only going to be on your college side team for probably 3-4 years max. During COVID, maybe 5 years, I guess. So I mean, and then a bunch of really good college players do absolutely nothing in the NFL. So once they leave that college team, unless they're a really, really good player, they're going to be absolutely worthless to your team very soon. So yeah, investing on the NFL side is certainly safer, but I like to just go hard and invest in the college side, see what happens. Like there's one league I've got a draft coming up. I have 12 of the first 72 picks, I think, for the college side draft. And so I'm really, really looking forward to that. My NFL team is not looking good at all, but I made the finals, I think, the year before and then won the championship on the college side this year. And it looks like I'm in prime position to do it again for 2022. So it's just there's different approaches. There are a couple teams that college side is absolutely garbage and they will never win that side, but their NFL team's great. So yeah, it's just my favorite format by far.
And I suppose you could treat it like in terms of the rankings similar to a Devi league if you really wanted to focus on the players you think are going to make it to the NFL. But you could separate and say, okay, who do you just think will score the most fantasy points in college, and just focus on that, and then worry about the NFL players in the NFL. Like, yeah, I guess you could have those two main big philosophies
Yeah.
and play off that.
And I will say, people like try to target a bunch of group of five, smaller school conference players all the time, thinking, oh, the competition will be so much easier for them. And that is also true. That is true. But what is also true is most of the time, if they're at a group of five school, they're also not as talented themselves. So yes, they will. There are, a handful of players that are worth reaching for on the group of five, smaller school kind of side. But most of the time, the best players are going to be the ones scoring the most points, like depending on your scheme. There are a few exceptions every single year, but man, it's funny because there's not that many defenses in college football that are actually, too many standard deviations better or above the mean in terms of performance. And so I'm going to trust the best talent. So I almost always have more Power 5 players, even in normal college fantasy leagues, than most people do, just because I'm betting on talent more than I am, what I think about this up and coming running back for Louisiana and Lafayette.
Raymond Calais, right?
Yeah.
I think, right? That was the school he went to?
Yeah, Raymond Calais did. He did. This year, the player that people were betting on is Chris Smith, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes out.
I could see, I guess, maybe more the appeal with the running back, but I speak especially for the wide receivers, not just their talent, but their quarterback's talent as well. Like you're probably not getting as good a passer as you would in the Power Fives.
Definitely not. And oftentimes the scheme is a little odd to where the quarterback's running too much, so it's sapping your value as well. But that's another podcast by itself.
All right. So the next question is: we talked about favorite formats, and again, I figured it would either be a Debbie or I guess campus to can actually makes a lot of sense as mentioned. But now specifically settings to leagues. What are what's a setting that you feel like is a must have, or maybe even flip it to like a setting that's like a must avoid? Like definitely never have that.
At this point, I don't have any leagues that are what used to be standard. So like you need to have PPR. Like at this point, like it's just I have my home league took forever to get there. But even like tight end premium, where your tight ends actually get a little bit of boost to their reception value, like whether it's 1.5 or even 2. I like playing in those kind of leagues. In fact, I think almost all my leagues are tight end premium. And I think I might have one league at this point that's not super flex because it's 2022. We don't have to play fantasy like it's 2005. I know it's still not mainstream, but super flex with the option to start at least 2 quarterbacks is an absolute must. Like I'm not going to join your league unless you can do that at this point.
All right. And we'll get to those. Maybe some of these players date back to 2005, maybe even earlier or later. But who are your all-time fantasy QB1, RB1, wide receiver 1, and tight end 1?
When I very first began, even just being mildly interested in fantasy football and playing Madden at the same time, the most ridiculous Madden player of all time and the most stupid cheat code for fantasy at the time in a couple of different windows in his career actually was Michael Vick. Like I think 04, 05, like Madden Michael Vick was silly and he was dumb for fantasy football at the time. And then he was again, like even after he went to prison and came back, he became this lightning in a bottle for the Eagles. And I think every single year where he absolutely went off, I just so happened to have him like everywhere. And so for me personally, that was a lot of fun because for whatever reason, he was never properly valued. Even back in the day, I feel like I'm not sure if we look back at ADP, it completely agreed with me, but I don't think he was ever going early enough. And he was the cheat code. You roll out left and you dump it over the quarterback's head in Madden, or you just let him run. And it was just like you couldn't use the Falcons. Like if you're playing anybody, you can't use the Falcons. And so for me,
or you got to switch to the backup quarterback.
Yes, exactly.
I don't even know who it was.
I don't even know either. Because no one ever probably used him ever. But so for me, I think I could go a few different directions. All Konami code options would be my favorites. But mostly like really good fantasy quarterbacks like Peyton Manning, even like Tom Brady for forever. I hated both of them in real life for beating the crap out of my Titans and ruining the AFC picture for 2 decades. So I couldn't really like them that much. But running back 1, LaDainian Tomlinson. No one else is in the conversation for me just because so many years in a row, like it was just him. Like if I'm going to trust anybody to get 20 plus fantasy points this week, it's going to be LT. Like even I think I even in the garbage like Jets year, like I still had him on my roster. I was like, I don't care. Like it's LaDainian Tomlinson. You're not going to have him not on your team. And so, yeah, definitely for running back, that's number 1. Wide receiver, I'm going to go super random, but I had Roddy White on my team every year that he was in the league. I think I even have a Roddy White jersey because like for those 6 years in a row that he was like a wide receiver one for fantasy, he like had at least 1,100, 1,200 yards 6 seasons in a row. He was like the anchor of my team. He was always on my team for redraft, even in dynasty. He was on my teams. So that's probably no one else's answer, but because of me, like personally, just always having him on my teams, like that was a random star of the mid to early 2000s. That was just my dude, so can't go wrong there. And then tight end one is just not even up for debate. Travis Kelce. Like we're gonna look back at this run of him just being tight end one 5+ years in a row and just be like, wow, how in the world was that ever possible? I know Gronk. Was just as dominant, and he was going first round in fantasy leagues for redraft purposes and whatnot. But to be that dominant and to stay healthy as he was, and to do what he did, like he was the only reason a few of my dynasty teams were constantly like in the championship game for 4 or 5 years in a row because Travis Kelce, I got Travis Kelce, round 4 or 5, like the year before he really exploded, and then just hey, that's free tight end one slot every single year. So yeah, sign me up.
Yeah, because I think his rookie year, I think it was mostly missed with injury, and then so his second year was really his rookie year, so just adjusting. So if you had got him at that point, entering his third year, yeah, you were laughing.
Yep, yeah, and he didn't cost a whole lot in dynasty. A lot of people, I think if I remember correctly, his ADP did kind of rise because people were savvy to his talent. They're like, okay, got to take him a little early, and even in like a tight end premium league, kind of had to take him a little early. But I was a believer, so I had him in several leagues, and so I'm just like, okay, cool. I'm just gonna coast back to at least the semis every single year because of Travis Kelce by himself.
All right, now we get to the final section of the episode, the high five section. So 5 different top 5 questions. Yes, all your time in Nashville. This one will be interesting where you go with this, but we'll start with top 5 artists or bands.
Oh man, top 5. It's funny. I actually prepped for the wrong show sheet for those who look behind the curtain. So I didn't an old show sheet that Kyle had sent me for another show I'd come on. So I didn't actually prep for this section. So bear with me. But I think just because of personal experience with them and appreciating, especially their early music that they had released before they even were signed, and to really stay in touch with them just off and on, even till today, 21 Pilots would be the one that I think is one that I really appreciate. Back in 2012, when they were still, it was just Tyler and Josh and their video guy going around in a van and a trailer. They played my small hometown in Indiana in this hole-in-the-wall venue with like 50 people. And we got to, basically my buddy Paul had opened up for them the prior time they came through. I almost didn't go to the show, but we afterwards we just grabbed some. I think we like went to Applebee's or something, grabbed some like half price apps, and then I was like, they were like, telling us about going and crashing in the parking lot of their next venue down in Nashville. And I was like, well, I live 5 minutes away. You guys want to just crash on my couch? And so we got to hang out and play some ping pong with Tyler and talk music with them. And then, a few months after that, they got their first record deal. I guess it's still their record deal to this day. And just to see them explode and have a couple other interactions with them over the years, that's been pretty cool. So probably number 1 for me, 21 Pilots. Back in the day when I grew up, it was Reliant K, Matt Thiessen, who, believe it or not, had like an off and on thing with Katy Perry before she was Katy Perry. There's rumors, by the way, that the Hot and Cold song is actually about Matt Thiessen, the lead singer of Reliant K. Yeah, so I believe it. It's kind of just an industry rumor, but I think that's legit. So Reliant K, just because when I was growing up, they were my thing. And then as I grew older and appreciated songwriter, the kind of songwriter feel, Ben Rector, who is a Nashville kind of townie. He's originally from Oklahoma, but now lives in Nashville. Everyone in Nashville really loves Ben Rector's stuff. He's like he calls his genre nice guy pop, and it's it's rock, but it's like piano driven. And my first instrument is piano, and so like I love that. So yeah, my top. So three are probably not normal answers, but like my top three here. But 21 Pilots, Reliant K, Ben Rector, and then after that, um, man, I'd say just because of my respect for his songwriting and his grind, and because his bass player was my wife's manager at Vanderbilt for a while, I'd say Chris Stapleton. he he just he's so Nashville. Like he played bars like up in Kentucky, like on Thursday to Sunday for 20 years before he actually made it. And then, when Tennessee Whiskey really finally hit a year after the album came out, by the way, and he played it with Justin Timberlake at the Grammys, and he was an overnight celebrity. This big, burly, crazy looking beard guy that had been a nobody. People around town knew him because he had done, the songwriting side of things and publishing side of things for years. But for him to blow up and see him just have all the success, like that's too cool. Plus, because of its success, his bass player worked for Vanderbilt at the time, and he had to go part time because Chris Stapleton blew up, so he had to go on tour with Chris a lot. And but they're like, "Hey, can you just stay on part time? You're too important to us." So he stayed on, making Chris Stapleton money and working, in accounting for Vanderbilt University here in town, the medical center. And then my wife was like, she was trying to find a new opportunity at the time, and she found out because of that success, her job came into play and opened up. And so she, because Chris Stapleton sang Tennessee Whiskey at the Grammys with Justin Timberlake, my wife got a new job. Like, so I'd say that's four, and I'm taking way too long, so we're gonna stop right there. But those are. Is that good enough?
That's amazing. Like also many great stories. I don't care. Like you said, they're kind of weird, unconventional answers, but that's perfect. We love that, and maybe some people are learning about some of those bands. Um, I mean, I guess it's been said a lot this year, but thank you, JT. I know a lot of fantasy managers are saying that about Jonathan Taylor, but here we're saying about Justin
Thank you, Justin
Timberlake.
Timberlake. Oh,
Impacting
and
so many
nicest guy in country music / swing music when he wants to do Christmas specials is Brett Eldridge, the coolest dude in all of country music. Like, the dude's like 6'5", got his start doing Frank Sinatra covers in Illinois, but now he does country music. And so not everybody knows the name Brett Eldridge, but he's like when I was an intern, like he was the nicest guy on the entire label. He got us all like free massages and stuff. Like he'd come in the intern room and just joke around with us and stuff. Nicest dude in the industry.
Awesome. Hey, love those stories.
Yeah, man.
Music connects us so much, and like it's good that people, who do that. There is so much positivity that they're bringing with their music and otherwise.
Yes. Yeah, music's obviously that's my thing.
Yeah, like you said, so many roles, whether it's publishing or booking, but brings us to the next top five, which is top five books. Even though those aren't same word, but not the same meaning. But top five books.
That's so tough. Like over the years, like there's been so many different books that have had an impact on my life. But to kind of hinting back at what I said earlier, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry is the name of a book that I read earlier this year, and that's been an adjustment. Like I've really tried to build that into how I just interact with everybody, and so that's been one I'd recommend to anybody. I can't. It's in my backpack still, and I can't remember the name of the author. I'm terrible. I can remember like the writer of some obscure 2008 pop song, but I can't remember the author of my favorite books. Yeah. Anyway, Man's Search for Meaning was a book that's by Viktor Frankl that I read both for grad school and on my own, and it's a really great story. It's a true story, but also kind of a look at his life. Really kind of dark, but because it's talking through some time in like concentration camps and things like that, but a really fascinating read. Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis is one of my favorite authors ever, and really I appreciate his view. He was a former atheist, turned Christian and author, and wrote a bunch of amazing books, including some fiction books that people still read today. So appreciate that. Let's see, for the Bible. That counts, right? That counts. And then I would say the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy. of books, and even like all the Hobbit and all those. Like I nerded out about that stuff like growing up. Love the movies, all that. I've read those so many times, and still can't believe how many characters they just left out entirely from the first book. But I won't be too bitter about that on the show today.
Oh, well, there's always room to talk about Tom Bombadil, no matter where you are.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
You're right there. You're right there.
No, would have loved to. Even in the extended gun, they made like 6-hour extended versions. You couldn't.
Yeah, you
By the way,
couldn't.
I looked up the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Is it by John Mark Cormer?
Comer, John Mark Comer. Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they actually have a podcast too. If you like ingesting the show and our books in segments, like they do, like I think 6 or 7 different episodes, just highlighting different portions of the book. You can find it all over the place.
Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, I'm sure some people might appreciate that. I would say hurry up and go look for it, but you don't want to do that. You don't want
to do it. You don't want to
hurry. We'll eliminate that. But next one is top 5 movies.
Other nerdy movies that I'm into, because everyone should be into them, is basically all of the Star Wars, everything, and not just like the movies, but like I've seen all the seasons of the Clone Wars and Rebels and all of the offshoots and even the comics. So anything that has to do with Star Wars, I don't even care how bad Episode 1 was. I still watch it, and I'll probably watch it again 2 or 3 times this year. So all the Star Wars movies. My wife and I watched all of the Harry Potter movies every year leading up to Halloween. And not that they're like super creepy or anything. It's just a tradition of ours. And that's kind of cheating. But I love how freaking weird V for Vendetta was. That was a big movie for me back in the day when I was going through my college anarchist years,
Everyone's got that period.
Yeah, everyone's got that stage, right? And so I still appreciate that, whether it's nostalgia or just what that's going into, just with Anonymous and how hilarious all that is. But that's another podcast. And then let's see, other movies that, there's probably 50 movies in there that I just covered. So
that's true. Star Wars alone, that's more than.
Plus, we're probably running out of time. So I'm just gonna move on.
If we just name just the trilogies, you still can get
just the trilogies. We got them all covered. Yeah.
All right. So we'll go to the next one. Yeah. People eat this question up a lot, but top 5 game day foods.
Oh man, let's see. Game day foods. I mean, you can't go wrong with any kind of like absolutely buried, covered nachos pile. I like to just stack on the hot sauce as hot as possible. I love eating
Tennessee hot too here, folks.
Oh yeah, Nashville hot anything. Like, by the way, Nashville hot chicken, Nashville hot flavor of whatever is fantastic. But like, go and get it at the right place. Like,
well, I was gonna say there's so many places now that have the Nashville hot style sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
I know Popeyes makes a pretty famous one, but like it's just every restaurant here in Canada just has their own variant of it this summer. It seems like it's just
the touristy place here in Nashville is Hattie B's. So a lot of people like that, but Bishop's, which is actually the B and Hattie B's, Bishop's is like the original, and it's like the meat and sides, like meat and 3 type approach. Most of the Bishop's places are kind of sketchy when you go in, but it's like my favorite place. Like there's one in East Nashville that like I would not take my child to, but like it's fantastic, and so like it's probably the best hot chicken. Oh yeah, Prince's is another one. If you come through town, Prince's is another one, and it's less sketchy. So, yeah, those are the places. But yeah, so anything spicy. I mean, I've actually been hospitalized by hot sauce, so I like it. I like it super hot. That's not a joke, but that's yeah.
I'm glad you're okay.
I'm okay, and I won the competition. We were my buddy. We were one-upping each other all summer when I was like 20, like eating hotter and hotter things, and we got this hot sauce where you had to be 18 or older. And you had to sign a waiver when you bought the stuff. And I had way too much of that with no food and went to the hospital. But anyway, that was stupid. But anyway, anything spicy. So I like any kind of like absurdly hot wings that you can barely taste because it's so hot. That's me.
All right. I guess that's so hot that it burns off the rest of the list. So we don't even have to do the rest of it.
Nope. That burnt the rest of the list off. So yeah, we're done.
All right, so we'll finish with this one. So Auburn is in Tennessee, right? I'm,
No, Auburn is in Alabama.
Okay, my
It is
U.S.
in.
geography is clearly not that good here up in
No,
Canada.
it's all good. It's all
But
good. It's in like southern, I guess southern central ish Alabama. Um, so unfortunately, they have to share the state with Alabama and recruiting and things like that. So yeah.
but okay, so maybe before we get to the question, which is top 5 all-time athletes from Auburn, do you want to
Mhm.
explain a bit of your connection to Auburn?
Sure. So it's kind of like a family team. It's kind of grown into that. Like my brother-in-law is actually from Auburn. He grew up in Auburn, going to tailgates all the time. It's the only school that I've been to several of their, their games live, outside of like Vanderbilt and Purdue, just because I get cheap Vanderbilt season tickets because my wife, that's where she works, and through Purdue because Purdue is my alma mater. And both of those are really bad at football, by the way. Purdue is normally terrible at football. They've been good here and there. Vanderbilt is always going to be bad at football because they don't care. And so, like, I really wanted to have a college football team that didn't suck. And so I had multiple family members go to Auburn and marry. My sister married somebody from Auburn, so that became like our family team. So that's not like a lifelong thing. That's probably been out since I was in college. But yeah, so I mean, like, right around like Cam Newton, or like right before Cam Newton got there, that's when I started rooting for them, which is a good time, like because
Yeah,
like
great timing.
right after I started rooting for Auburn, like was when they blew up and made the national championships, and it was fun. But again, I guess the top 5 athletes from Auburn, I mean, the number one would have to not actually be Cam Newton. It would have to be Bo Jackson. Like Bo Jackson, one of the greatest athletic humans of all time. So like I wasn't playing fantasy football, but to play professional baseball, football, to dominate the way he did at every single level of every play, like he's still one of the most dominant video game figures when there were like 4 pixels going on your screen. Like he still broke video games even before video games were really popular. So Bo Jackson has to be number one. But outside of that, Cam Newton, number 2, just because he's kind of defined this I don't know, this era of the program. And some of the players that he was putting up with were just so bad. Like he carried that team. Um, like it was just hilarious. Like if you look back at the roster, it's a list of a whole bunch of nobodies, and then Cam Newton, he's just carrying all 84 other scholarship players on his back to a national championship. That's how that went. But yeah,
It's
so
not quite that extent in Carolina, but maybe some years with the receiving core. Okay, here's Kelvin Benjamin and Devin Funchess. Go Cam, do your thing.
yes, yeah, absolutely. But
Good
then I
defense,
think,
but
yeah, exactly. And then I think it probably has to be back in the day. I mean, if you look at like some of I mean, like when we talk about like early running back picks, we're never going to see, like 2 top 5 running backs maybe ever again in the NFL draft. But the fact that Auburn had 2 top 5 picks in the same draft that were both running backs, like that, like when you say that stat, people are like, no, that's made up. That's not real. But it was Cadillac Williams and Ronnie Brown in the same freaking draft. I don't know. I don't know if you were playing fantasy football back when Ronnie Brown was doing the whole Wildcat thing with the Dolphins. But like that was a big deal. Like or I guess it was, I don't even know, 06, 07, 08 maybe, when he was like nobody could figure out the Wildcat. Like that was a big deal. Like it was really weird. And that was like an Auburn / Ronnie Brown thing. And so that was a lot of fun. So those two guys have to be up there. And then just another player, kind of more recently, just because of what he did on the defensive side of the ball. To me, Nick Fairley comes to mind because he was just absolutely dominant. Like teams had no answer for him, and they didn't have a whole lot of surrounding talent with Nick Fairley, and he didn't have a crazy elite NFL career, but Nick Fairley was like the dude. And as far as SEC interior defensive linemen go, like he was an absolute monster for Auburn when he was here. Or when he was,
He played for
yeah,
the Lions, right? In the pros.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
remember him. Yeah.
yeah. So he wasn't Hall of Famer in the NFL or whatever, but he was one of the best just monsters for college football purposes.
And Ronnie Brown, so I wouldn't have played back in 2006, but did he later play for the Chargers?
Yeah, I think so for a little bit. Like, yeah, I
I
can
think I
remember all
remember
the
him
teams.
then. I don't know
He
if I
bounced
rostered him
around.
then, but I
He
think.
bounced around some. He like wasn't an incredible pro necessarily, but
Oh, so a team shouldn't spend a top 5 pick on a running back.
yeah, I think they figured that out shortly after they drafted Cadillac Williams and Roddy Brown. But they were awesome players. Like at the same time, like the multiple 1,000-yard kind of rushers in college on the same team. Like you never really see that anymore. So to have both of those guys absolutely smashing for 1,000+ yards and then both being early first round picks was just something we'll never see again.
Because I mean, like I guess the closest we've come recently is Javonte Williams and Michael Carter, and one was a second round pick and one was a fourth round pick. Like they have the
Yeah.
production, but they
Yeah,
weren't.
like, and even if it's like a Bama tandem again, like this year, like Jahmyr Gibbs and whoever else we want to put up, and like Jace McClellan, I guess, as a lot of people still like him. Like, there's no way that we see more than one of those go round one, and we might see neither of them go round one, even coming from one of the running back U's. And so like even like what Nick Chubb, Sony Michelle, like that was really close. But even then, like it's just never gonna happen again.
Yeah, and I guess. Well, I mean, if you've missed the episode up to this point, it's not going to happen again. But you can always go back and check again. All the archives for everything going for 2 Live is here. But yeah, you're at the end of the episode. Travis, really appreciate you coming on, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, appreciate it, and I appreciated talking about a bunch of non football stuff too. I've got I've got some weird music stories. I'm sure we can talk more later about those. But yeah, good time. So thanks again.
Yeah, yeah. The idea is, yeah, we have fun with football and stuff, but it's not the only fun we have in life. So that's part of the point of the show is to kind of just let all the other things we've always ever wanted to talk about, but never been able to on podcasts before. So
Amen. Well,
yeah, I mean,
cool.
going for 2 Live, of course, always continuing. I know next Monday we'll have the 2 point conversion. I believe speak on it next Tuesday. The armchair show next Wednesday. I know Jeff took the week off, so again, press coverage not usually on a Thursday. So it actually it was probably the best week to do this type of like a show on a Thursday, just with no armchair on Wednesday. So it broke up the week a little bit, but yeah, Jeff and Ryan will be back next week. I know next Thursday. Myself and Devin and Brian will be back with the Dynasty Gambit. I think we'll be just like last week we talked about a mock draft we did. I think we're gonna instead of just going pick by pick through the first 3 rounds, which is all we managed to do in an hour and a half, we'll
Yeah.
actually go through teams and look at the later ends of the draft as well. So yeah, look for that all next week on the Going for 2 Live network at Going for 2 Live on Twitter. And yeah, Travis, anything you want to plug for the viewers and listeners?
I'm just gonna be getting back to some college decanting stuff with Stefan Leco here soon, and really just gonna be doing some solid verbal writing here soon, and rookie coverage and a bunch of ramping up to the NFL season stuff over at RotoViz here soon. So be looking for that. But yeah, follow my stuff at ff_Travis M on Twitter. That's where I generally post things. Haven't as much here lately because I was out of the country for a little while, and then in quarantine taking care of my kid. But gonna get back to the grind here soon.
Yeah, and again, glad you could take this time and join us here on the press coverage. And once again, I'm Kyle Senra at Senra Says. So on behalf of Travis, thank you all the viewers, listeners. This was press coverage. Bye for now.